Welcome back to Surfing Baseball. My special guests today are Jim Riggleman and Pete Mackanin. First of all, I'd like to say for you viewers out there, you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter. My special guests today, as I just mentioned, Jim Riggleman and Pete Mackanin. I want to tell you a little bit about these guys. These guys are long-time baseball people. Jim and I go back. We were together when Jim first came to the big leagues. We worked together in San Diego. Jim managed a total of 3,200 games over a 35-year career. 25 or 35 year. I'm not sure about that, but he managed 1,630 games in the big leagues. 1,620 obviously is a 10 years, so 10-year plus in the major leagues over 13 different seasons. He managed San Diego, the Cubs, Seattle, Washington, and Cincinnati. Played 7 years before that. Then managed 11 years in the minor leagues before managing in the big leagues. So has extensive experience at both levels. My other guest, Pete Mackanin. Pete played 15 years, I believe, Pete. Managed over 500 games in the big leagues and managed over 1,800 games in the minor leagues over several years. So you guys have seen it all as managers and players. So let me start with this. Jim Riggleman, when you got drafted, where were you playing and what was your reaction and who was your first affiliate?
Well, I got drafted in 1974. I played college baseball at we referred to as Harvard of the Mid-Atlantic, Frostburg State University. And I played there for 4 years, and I had a great coach, Bob Wells. Bob is with us still at 92 years old. But I learned a lot of baseball from Bob, but the biggest break I got was Bob got me affiliated in the Cape Cod League. And the Cape Cod League allowed me to play against some really good competition, and I did okay there, which put me in a position to get drafted at a fairly high level. You know, I was drafted in the fourth round, and that would not have happened without the Cape Cod League. So I'm very much indebted to Bob Wells for getting me in the Cape Cod League and let me see if I could play against that level of competition there. And from there, I got drafted.
I remember you told me you had the opportunity to go to Cape Cod to jog my memory. And I guess Bill Livesey called you up and said, hey, you know what you do when you go to these summer leagues, you work during the day and play at night. And Bill Livesey said, hey, Jim, I got a great job for you at the Marriott. So tell that story.
Well, yeah, he says he called me in that Boston accent, you know, you'd be parking cars and, you know,
serving drinks at the pool.
Billy Allman would be our shot stop. And you know, Livesey was a great character. I love him. And great baseball man. But he tells me he'll get me a job at the Holiday Inn because you had to work. In those days, you had to work or you would be considered somebody's taking care of you. You lose your amateur status. So you had to work. And so I'm envisioning going up there and serving iced tea out by the pool and so forth. And I get there and he takes me to the Holiday Inn and we're building it. It was a construction job, you know, and it was out in the right field of the stadium. I had no transportation. I would get to work at 7 a.m, work all day, jump the right field fence and go on over for batting practice. You know? And Livesey was on my ASS all the time about, you know, what's the matter with you, Riggleman? Let's go. You're late. You know, Coach, they just, you know, I'm hanging drywall over there. You know?
Hey, Pete, how about you? Where were you drafted? Where were you when you got drafted, and what was your first?
Well, I was a 17-year-old senior in high school in Brother Rice in Chicago, south side of Chicago, and it's funny, we had an all-star game during, you know, towards the end of the season, right before the draft or right at the draft. And I had a broken thumb. I got hit by a pitch and I stayed in the game. I got a hit and all that. And then I found out I got drafted that same day. I said, you know what? I got a broken thumb. Are you going to still draft me? And it turned out okay. I ended up going to Whitfield, Virginia a couple of weeks later. And, you know, back then you played. I had a broken thumb, but I played.
Isn't that something? So what, Jim, I'll start with you. What was your first opportunity? When did the opportunity arise to manage or coach in the minor leagues? What were the circumstances surrounding that as your playing career was coming to an end?
Well, I'll say this. I got to give scouts a lot of credit. I signed in the fourth round, and they sent me right to Double-A. And I give them a lot of credit. They knew a Double-A ball player when they saw one. I was in Double-A for 7 years. And about the seventh year, George Kissel, famous instructor that I know Pete knows and all that. Ed, you know of George,
Sure.
but a legendary instructor who passed some years ago. But he was kind of running our system in the minor leagues. And he approached me toward the end of my career there. And he said, would you think about staying in the organization and some capacity to coach or manage when you're done playing? And I said, yeah, but I said, I'm having a pretty good year here. I was actually having the best year I ever had. I said, I want to play. And he said, yeah, you're going to play, but when you're done. And so, I finished that, had a good year. And the next year they wanted to send me back for my 8th year of Double-A. And I said, you know what, why don't I just make that transition? It's if I can't go anywhere from that year I just had, then it's time for me to face it and realize it's just not going to happen. So I went ahead and took the opportunity to be a coach for the Cardinal organization in the minor leagues.
Pete, you're a little modest now. You got a chance to play in the big leagues for quite a bit of time, and your career lasted a while longer than Jim's, I believe, playing career. What was the transition like for you?
Well, I had seen parts of 9 seasons in the big leagues, 7.5 full seasons. And after a couple, 3 seasons, they found out that I could run, and I can run a little. I had a little doubles power. I could hit a home run. I made the plays. I could bunt, hit and run, all that stuff. So I was a utility guy the rest of my career. But at the end of my actually, what happened in '83, I was in AAA with Okie City with the Rangers, and I was then MVP of the team, and I didn't get called up. So I knew that was it. I got a call from an agent named Alan Mearsand. Jim might know him. You guys
I know Alan.
And he had talked to what's the guy's name? Gordon with the Cubs. Gordon, God, was one of my best guys. Gordon Goldsberry. That's right. Yeah, he asked me if I wanted to manage, and I said, you know what? I don't know if I'll be any good at it, but I'll give it a shot. I think I'd like to try it. And from there on, the worst and best thing that could have happened to me is my first 2 years in A-ball. We got in the playoffs, and I thought I was like Billy Martin. I thought I could really.
And you know what? Managing back then in A-ball was, today in A-ball, they've got a full staff of, hitting guy, pitching guy, trainers.
Who my first
nutritionists, you name it. I mean, what was it like staff-wise, Pete, when you first started managing?
Well, I tell you what, my first starting pitcher was Greg Maddox, a 19-year-old kid, which was kind of fun.
Wow.
But as far as staff's concerned, a guy named Jim Wright. Jim probably knows him.
Yeah.
Tall right-hander, and he was I really liked him as a pitching coach, and he was my pitching coach kind of all the way up, and then even in Venezuela a couple of years he coached for me as a pitching coach. But all we had was rovers, and with the Cubs organization, what they had us do, if you were in A-ball, Dallas Green was the GM, and what up until June 15th, you had to have a morning workout every day until June 15th. Now that's at home. And it wouldn't have to be the whole team, but it would be basically, you'd take the infielders out or the double play combo, or you'd have some extra BP for somebody or what have you, pitchers working on whatever. And up until June 15th. So that was kind of the gist of it. I was the head coach, and I had a pitching coach, and that's it. No hitting coach.
Jim, what was it like staff-wise?
Yeah, I really literally did not have a staff. It was me and the trainer. And we the first 4 years I managed in the minor leagues, no coaches. It was like Pete said, we had rovers. We didn't have a pitching coach or a hitting coach with me, So, when I made my trips to the mound, I would I would just say to the pitcher, Bo Milliken was the roving pitching coach. I would say, what's Bo been telling you to do? And he said, well, he wants me to do that. I said, well, do that then. Let's go. And like my buddy Dave Bialis, who managed a long time in the minor leagues, we would just be in the dugout yelling out to the pitcher, get your arm up, like we don't know if that's going to do any good, but we used to hear Bo say it. So, it really, though, it allowed me to be there when the pitcher threw his sides, be there when he warm up before the game, when he went into it. I through batting practice, hit infield practice, you had all these duties, which at the time, we were young, Pete, you know how it was. You were young, you could do all that. And it prepared you without you knowing it. You were getting prepared for a lot of aspects of the game: infield play, outfield play, base running, hitting, pitching. You kind of had to. These players are asking you things, and they're expecting answers. So, you kind of learn it, and you learn from your rovers, and you kind of became a jack of all trades, as well as loading the bus and handing out meal money and a little bit of everything. So. I wouldn't trade it for anything, but as you look back on it, it was a lot of work.
I remember you said something to me in AAA when I was a farm director and you're the AAA manager. You said, I remember there was a pitching coach who remained anonymous who thought he had more authority than he did. He wanted to make decisions on who's coming in the game when, et cetera. And you said to me, hey, the way I was brought up, I tell the pitching coach, you teach him how to pitch, I'll tell him when to pitch. And that always struck me as something that was old school, but hey, you're the captain of the ship, and
well, you were, as the manager, I was making managerial decisions to take the pitcher in or out. Now I'm going to run it by the pitching coach. I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to get him out of here now, or I'm going to give him another hitter, or, I might say, what do you think? But, some pitching coaches and organizations were brought along to where, hey, that's your pitching staff. You decide how they're going to be used. You decide when they're going to be used. I was brought along in a time where the manager decided that. Now, in today's game, I'm sure it's very much decided by pitching coordinator, pitching coach.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little later on. But, and Pete, did you feel the same way managing early in your career? You had rovers, and when they're not in town, and you're looking at that pitcher, is he getting the ball up on his breaking ball? Is he out there breathing with his mouth open? Is he got his hands on his knees behind the mound between pitches?
Well, I leaned on my pitching coach for the pitching staff. However, there was an incident. Not an incident, but one day we were in, I think it was Appleton. Jim was my pitching coach, obviously. And we had a close game, and I had a pitcher on the mound in the 5th or 6th inning. And I didn't know. He looked a little shaky to me, and I said, Jim, what do you think? He said, give him one more hitter with a couple men on base. 2-run double, right? So we lose the game by a run, and I'm kind of upset. I'm PO'd, right? I wasn't mad at Jim. I didn't show it, but I was mad at Jim because I listened to him. And then that taught me a real good lesson. I went home that night and I said, you know what? If you want to be the manager, you make the decision. You don't listen to the pitching coach. You listen to him. If he can talk you into it and it makes sense, because Jim knows there's a lot of questions that you have and a lot of tough decisions, and somebody's got to make them. And I said, look, if you want to continue managing, Pete, you better just start. You better make the decisions. And
as I said, you're the captain of the ship, and you're responsible what happens on that field. Now, if you would ask them after,
I'm totally to leave him out there.
If you asked them, why did you say that? He probably would have said something. Well, I had a feeling, and those don't seem to work out most of the time.
Well, you know what it is, Ed? It's that every fan in the stands has an idea of what should happen. Take him out, leave him in. Take him out. Oh,
sure.
Everybody's a fan, and everybody wants to see the decision they like, and somebody's got to do it. And I'm going to say, Jim, you're the manager. You do it.
I always felt, it's funny you say that, because I always felt, when fans see you go out to the mound and you take that pitcher out and you signal the next guy in and he gives up the home run, that's on you, the manager. You picked that guy to take the other guy out. So you gave up that home run. It has nothing to do with the guy that gave up the home run. It's your fault, that kind of thing.
I don't want to bogart the conversation, but I got a little story with you guys know Dick Pohl, right?
Oh yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I was with him in Chicago.
Yeah, he was in. We were in instruction league in Arizona, and I had a right-handed pitcher on the mound, and I'm learning how to manage. This is before I had my own team. This is the instruction league, right? So Dick's in the dugout, and this guy, Jackie Davison, was the guy. He was one of our top picks. And so I look at Dick and I go, Dick, I'm going to go get him. He said, well, go ahead. So I walk out to the mound, and I'm talking to Jackie. I come walking back out to the dugout, and I didn't take him out of the game. And Dick is in stitches. He's laughing his butt off. And I said, what are you laughing at? He said, he talked you out of it, didn't he? I said, yeah. He said, my first time, another lesson learned.
Well, the end of that story usually is next pitch, 3-run homer.
Well, that's what happened.
Well, again, I don't want to monopolize, but
Oh, it's okay.
Ed, I had the classic left-hander from down where you grew up in Miami, Paul Cherry, left-handed pitcher, just the classic left-hander. I love the kid to death. He's since passed. He used to, the hat was on a little crooked. He was just unbelievable character. But I'm in my first year managing. I'm managing maybe my 8th game in my career. It's the only time I ever did this. I've never done it since. As I walked to the mound, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was a 30-year-old manager. Should I take him out or not? I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And this kid was talking a mile a minute about leave me in, Jim. Don't take me out, Jim. Don't take me out. That guy should have caught that ball anyway. Should be nobody on base, and now I got 2 guys on, but I should, leave me in. So I left him in. I said, you better get this guy, Paul. Let's go. I'm barely at the dugout in St. Pete. It's a long walk. I turn around. Steve Demeter, the MVP of the league, hit a 3-run homer, and I'm feeling bad, but Paul gets the next guy out for the 3rd out, a left-handed hitter. He comes in. Paul Cherry walks up to me in the dugout, takes his hat off, and he says, hey, Jim, you got to get me out of there. I had nothing left. But that was the only time and last time I ever went to the mound and didn't know what I was going to do.
Yeah. That's funny. Pitchers are, by the time I pitched in the 70s, and I'm sure you guys, I never managed, but I managed a lot of managers. But,
yeah,
I remember every year I pitched in the minor leagues or the big leagues, the manager would get the pitchers together and say, hey, guys, when I come out there and I put my hand out, just give me the ball and then walk off. If you got something to say, you can come in my office after the game. And I remember we were in Shea Stadium, and Frank Robinson's the manager. I can't, like you, Pete, I can't remember the pitcher. It was a big, strong guy. And Frank goes out to the mound, and he's halfway between the white line and the mound, and this guy flips the ball to him.
Oh, yeah.
Frank catches it with his left hand, grabs this guy by the neck, by the shirt, and walks him back to the mound. And like, I could see him barking at him, and then like kind of tosses him aside, and the guy walks in with his tail between his legs. Yeah. So did the guy ever toss the ball to you guys or anything disrespectful like that at any time?
I'll let you go, Pete.
No, nobody's done that. Well, let's put it this way. I had Armando Benitez in Dominican. He was my closer this one year. And he was, Armando had a hell of a career, but he was 0-8 that year as my closer. And the first time I took him out of the game, as a closer, he looked at me. He said, "Pete, I go home. I know play tomorrow." And then I talked to him the next day, and he'd be fine. Second time I had to take him out. I mean, I didn't want to, but I'm trying. Down there, Jim, you got to win.
Oh,
you can't.
No development down a winter ball.
No.
So the third time, it's my second trip, and I'm walking out to the mound, and he's frustrated. I'm frustrated, but I got to do it. I don't want 15,000 fans, throwing beer at me. And so I get out there, and he turns his back and walks to the other side of the mound, looking in the center field. And I go, Mondo, come on. I have to take you out. You know you have to go. He said, I know going. No. He said, okay, I go, Pete, but I quit. I no come back. The next day, he came back, the same thing. That was probably about the worst.
That's funny.
I had a rule, Pete, Ed. I always got my pictures together in before the season started when we had our club set, because I'd watched enough major league games as a minor league manager. You're watching TV, a move gets made in the game, you can tell the pitcher's upset. The camera would go to the manager, the camera would go to the pitcher who's pissed off, and they want to see reactions. So I always had a rule that if you're upset with me for taking you out of a game, just give me the ball, go in the dugout, don't say anything, don't do anything, and we won't talk. Let's talk about it tomorrow. Neither one of us will say something we shouldn't have said. Maybe my decision didn't go well, and now he's upset with me. He starts saying stuff, then I start getting on him. Let's talk tomorrow. Don't question my decision tonight. And my answer for you tomorrow when we talk might very well be, hey, I'll tell you why I took you out. I took you out. I screwed up. I shouldn't have taken you out. If I had it to do over, I wouldn't. But I'm glad we're talking about it calmly instead of, yelling at each other in a dugout, which happened a couple times.
Yeah. That's a good segue into my next
Let me throw one more at you.
Okay.
You know Bob Tewksbury, right?
Oh, I pitched with him.
Okay. Well, he was pitching for me at AAA Iowa, and he was pitching. He had a great, I don't know how many games that he went to the big leagues for me. And he's on the mound. It's about the 7th inning. And he kept looking into the dugout. And I think Jim Wright was my pitcher, because I said, Jim, what's he doing? He said, he keeps looking at you, throw another pitch, look at me. And he's wiggling his little pinkies. He's on the mound and he's wiggling his, can you see it? He's doing this with his little finger. And I go, what's he doing? So I go out to the mound finally and I said, Tooks, what are you doing? He said, Pete, that's my sign to take me out. I'm out. I'm out. Well, how about telling me? You didn't tell me that.
You got to tell me that? Or?
Okay, sorry, my buddy.
I thought you had tendonitis in your pinky.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim, I'll start with you. How did you find out you were going to the big leagues, and what was your reaction and your family's reaction? That's a big deal. That's like getting called up. That's even probably bigger than getting called up as a player. Pete, I'll let you talk to that.
Well, I was
big move. So how did you find out?
I was managing, several years in the minor leagues, and Whitey Herzog was our manager in the big leagues. Lee Thomas was our farm director, a great man, and Lee got the Philadelphia Phillies major league general manager position. So he left the Cardinal organization. He took Nick Leyva with him to be his manager. And Nick had been with the Cardinals. Nick now goes to be the Phillies manager. And when Lee Thomas left the farm director position in St. Louis, they asked me to take that position. And I did it for a few months. And I just was depressed. I missed managing so much. What am I doing here? I'm in this office. I knew all the players in the system. I knew the system inside out. I could have done that job, for years. I was able to do it, but I just, my son is in Florida. I'm in St. Louis. I just couldn't justify, what am I doing away? And out of nowhere, when Lee Thomas took Nick Leyva, Whitey Herzog walks into my office in St. Louis, my farm director's office, and says, Rig, you don't want to do this job. I'm going to put you on my staff. And I said, oh my God.
Thank you, Jesus.
Oh boy. And the general manager, Dow Maxfield, was upset with me for making that decision. But, I had to do it. It was,
sure.
It was the thing to do.
How about managing when you first found out you were going to manage in the big leagues? I was there, but I'll let you tell the story.
Yeah, well, I coached. I managed in AAA for you. And I went home when that season was over in Las Vegas after 2 years in Las Vegas. And I'm not
around September 1st. Right?
Yeah, I'm not thinking anything. And we get to around mid-September and I get a call from you saying, Joe McIlvaine and Tom Werner, the owner, want to talk to you about managing the club the rest of the year. We're going to make a change and have you manage the club the rest of the year, but we want you to meet Tom Werner first. So you guys flew me out to San Diego, and I met Tom and Joe for dinner. And, you guys, the talent on that team that I had for the last 12 days, the names associated with Sheffield, McGriff, Gwynn, just a heck of a bunch of talent. But Tom Werner is telling me, he's saying this team is not who you're going to manage next year. We're going to sell everybody. Yeah. We're gonna have so I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'll be the manager, so we're gonna kick butt here. I'm a great manager, so we're gonna get this done. And so I get the job and proceed to lose 101 games. And
I was in the front office when he gave us that edict. Everybody's got to go, and we were stunned.
Yeah. Well, and so you and Joe were my security in San Diego. So if we're getting beat, I know Joe knows what we're going through. We're getting rid of all of our players. Getting beat is going to happen here. So when Joe resigned, that was my security blanket. When he was gone, I knew that it was going to be a tough go here because, as Randy Smith took over, he's coming in a situation where he's the general manager, and he's going to want to get his own guy, and he got a great one in Bruce Bochy. So,
yeah. Remember those days well.
Yeah.
And Pete, how'd you find out you were going to be quickly first as a coach and then getting the big league manager's job?
As a coach was in 1997. I had managed the previous 2 years in Ottawa, AAA for the Expos, and I got Jim Beattie was the GM, and they asked me to be the third base coach for Felipe. So I got, of course, I was pretty excited about it. And the one thing about it that was kind of interesting is I had managed in AAA for 2 years, and they gave me a halfway decent salary. I was happy with. They gave me a car. They put me up at the hotel, a little mini suite, and the clubhouse dues was a lot less than the big leagues, and so on and so forth. Then I got to the big leagues for like a $10,000 raise, but I had to pay big league clubhouse dues. I had to get my own apartment, my own car, and I made less money going to the big leagues. But I did get the licensing revenue, which was good.
Yeah.
After that, I got fired from there to 2000. My next stint in the big leagues was I went to coach to be Lloyd McClendon's bench coach in 2003.
In Pittsburgh.
In Pittsburgh, his coach, bench coach. And 3, 4, and then 5, he got fired in beginning of September, and I took over for him as manager for the rest of that year. And I didn't get the job, and then I ended up scouting for the Reds as an advanced scout. Wayne Christie was the GM there. Jerry Naron, in my second year as an advanced scout, 2006. 2007. I'm sorry. Jerry got fired, and Wayne made me the manager. Okay, so, and I didn't get that job at the end of that year. Dusty got that job.
Okay.
But it was pretty interesting that, that's another story. I won't want to go into that. But after that, I scouted for the Yankees in 2008. In 2009, the Phillies called me to ask me to be the third base coach.
For Ryan Sandberg?
Rhino.
Yeah.
And I did that for in 2000 and 2009, 2010. Charlie was a manager. I'm sorry, 2009, 10, 11, and 12. I was the bench coach for Charlie. I'm getting confused with all these different firings and hirings. So at the end of 12, I get fired, and I go back to scout for the Yankees in 2013. The Phillies call me. Rhino calls me back and wants me to coach third for him in 2014. He manages that year. Halfway during the season in 2015, he quits, and they make me the manager. And I ended up my career there. So it was roller coasters.
Yeah, I bet. You know, you guys have both, Jim, you alluded to it, managed some pretty heavyweight names. You know, as you said, Jim, Tony Gwynn, Fred McGriff, Gary Sheffield, but Pete, also, you know, Ryan Howard, Josh Hamilton, Chase Utley, those caliber of players. How much effect, good and bad, can a star player have on a team? And I know, Jim, you've had some guys that were a royal pain in the ass, and because I witnessed it, and Pete, I know that you had some pretty heavyweight guys. I mean, how much? I'll start on this, Jim. How much can like a superstar player make your life easier as a manager? He could really help with that, I bet.
Yeah, well, you know, if your best players are also great people, that's huge. That solves a lot of problems in that clubhouse. If your best players are, you know, they're just not invested in what's going on, they don't believe in you. You know, you don't have a track record yourself, meaning me. You know, you don't have a winning pedigree as a manager yet. So they're, you know,
they're going through like an extension, contractual issues.
Yeah.
And they're pissed off about that, which I've seen many times.
Yeah. And, you know, I said this to a writer one time, and I thought he would write it. It's probably better that he didn't. But, you know, one of the biggest adjustments I had to make, a writer asked me the question, what's the difference between managing in the big leagues and managing in the minor leagues? And it was an indictment on the game. My answer, I said, you know, I'm going to tell you, my biggest adjustment is I've had to lower my bar for what I will accept as a great effort. You know, and that's a shame to say, because when you're managing in the minor leagues, Pete, you probably experience, they leave it all out there on the field for you every day. They're trying to get to the big leagues. I fell in love with those guys. Yeah. And now I just assumed when I got to the big leagues as a manager, they're going to do it there too. And when they didn't, I felt that was my place to address that. I'm the manager. If I'm not getting a good effort on a ground ball, if a guy misses a ball and he doesn't hustle after it, if he you know, doesn't run a pop-up out, he should be on second and he's on first when the left fielder missed the ball. These type of things, you know, to me, that's my job to say, hey, let's go, turn it up a notch, man. You know, people paid to get in this game. Let's go. And that caused friction between me and several players.
Sure.
But I got to be able to look in the mirror too, you know.
Absolutely.
I can't be afraid of these players, so I would address it. And it irritated me that I had to address it a number of times, whereas in the minor leagues, that was, you know, maybe once a year, every couple of years, you'd get on a player about not hustling, you know.
Yeah, Pete, I know you had some pretty high-profile heavyweight players. How can they help and how can they hurt?
Well, you know, it's funny. When I was a younger manager, I was like of the old school regime. You know, I played for Dick Williams, Whitey Herzog, Billy Martin, Bobby Cox, Gene Mauch. I played for these guys, and I tried to emulate them. You know, and it was like, hey, you're not playing because I'm the manager.
Yeah.
But then I learned over time that the best way for me, I kind of likened it to raising my son. I said, look, I wear two caps. One says P, it's pal, and the other says D, it's dad. When I put on the pal hat, I'm a cool guy. When I put on the dad hat, you do what I say.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And I said, okay, that's how I kind of handle it. And I felt like because of Jim knows that the egos in the big leagues are really unbelievable, you know.
Yeah.
And they're hard to deal with at times, but sometimes people fool you. Sometimes the guy that you think is going to be awesome is not, and the guy that you think is going to be a problem is not. And I felt the best way I could be as even keeled as I could be, and try not to show my emotions, which I went against that a couple of times. I can't help it. But I felt if I was even keeled, I'd call the guy in and say, look, you know, I had to back off on Ryan Howard's playing time. That was not easy. He was in my office 7-8 times trying to convince me to play him more. And I had my way of telling him that I couldn't or wouldn't. And he had his way of telling me, well, we're not going to win. So let me get out of let me try to get back on my hitting, they'd start hitting more. And I said, well, I can't do that because I got to try to win games. And, I know how you feel. And Pete, I know how he was an ultimate professional the way he handled it with me, which made it easy.
Yeah, sometimes, the buck stops with you in certain decisions. And I went through it, as a major league general manager. Why didn't you sign Randy Johnson as a free agent? Well, I wanted to, but the Tribune wouldn't give me the money to do it. Well, boy, I'll be out on the sidewalk that day,
Yeah.
So, you start talking, well, if we were one player away and I felt we were close, blah, blah, blah. So the next day I'm the village idiot. But, that's part of the job. The buck's got to stop for you. And sometimes you make some really tough decisions.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that analytics and has made its way into the dugout in terms of like real-time decisions during the game that a manager can or can't or must make? Jim, I'll start with you. I don't know if you went through it.
I don't know that I have
recently.
I didn't experience it. The last time I managed was 6 years ago, and we had an analytics staff, and we had conversations occasionally. We were a small staff at that point in Cincinnati, much bigger now for analytics. But I enjoyed the conversations. I enjoyed hearing what the guys were saying, what they were thinking. They were a little shy about it because it was so new there. But they were smart young people. I enjoyed talking with them. But never was I questioned or was it suggested to me, we think this should happen, in the sixth inning with so-and-so pitchers and these hitters coming up. They never questioned stuff like that. Whether it happens now, that was your question, and whether it happens now, it probably does, but to what extent, I really can't tell you.
Okay. Pete?
Well, I'll tell you what, one thing that I was very happy about is when I took over for the Phillies in the middle of 2015, and I managed 16, 17, and 18. They put me in, gave me a 3-year deal to scout afterwards. Anyway, the thing about it was that I didn't. I got ahead of myself. What were we talking about? The
analytics.
Analytics. Nobody. Matt Klentak was a GM. Not once did he put any analytics in front of me. They had an analytic group. Nobody ever told me who to play. Nobody told me how to make out the lineup. I just did what I wanted to do, and it was fine with Matt. And so I was pretty lucky that way.
Yeah, and I agree with you guys. And Jim, what you said, I mean, these guys have a lot to offer. And, I'm sure there'd be times where, well, did you know that this guy was, 1 for 12 versus this guy in the minor league, whatever it is that you haven't had the time to dive that deep into. You say, well, gee, that's good info. Thank you very much. But I hope it doesn't come to the point where they're telling you to make decisions based on numbers when we know it's a human being game. We know that,
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing is, most of the analytics and the 3-letter acronyms that we put on some of these categories, most of it is stuff that we kind of were doing anyway. We just didn't have a label on it,
That's right.
I know just something as simple as on-base percentage, what I think is a very important number.
Absolutely.
That's not even scratching the surface of analytics. But I remember in Chicago, we had Sean Dunston, and he's in the Cubs Hall of Fame. Great player, great talent. And Sean just didn't walk. One day Brian McRae was in the dugout, and the pitcher walked Sean Dunston, and McRae was yelling out, "Do you realize you just walked Sean Dunston?" But the
Get
thing
the ball.
we didn't really need a number to tell us that Sean's not going to be on base. Whatever hits he gets, that's how much he's going to be on base because he's up there hacking. So, you just kind of knew that. You didn't really have a 3-letter acronym for it or whatever. You just absorbed it and used it.
Yeah. Jim, I got to interject something. I had in Ottawa, I had Vladimir Guerrero. This guy, thou shall not pass. I'm in AAA, and my team's not hitting very much, and we're hitting like 240 as a team, 250 as a team. And I get the double, and he wasn't even playing for me. He was in Double-A, hitting 400 with 280 at bats and 8 walks. Swear to God. And I had a team meeting, and I said, guys, I understand the need to, know the strike zone and work the strike zone and not swing at bad pitches. But Vladdy's got 8 walks and 280 at bats. Go up there and hack and start trying to be more aggressive at the plate. I had to have a meeting on it. I looked at the numbers. I said, "You kidding me?" But he was just a.
Oh yeah, I mean, you take the good with the bad, but I mean, Vlad, what a talent! And if he's a bad ball hitter, it works for him.
That's Andre Dawson. I mean, there's more than one way to bake a cake. I'll tell you that. Well, guys, I'll tell you what, that was great. I hope we can have you guys back as the season progresses. We get into September and pennant races and talk about that a little bit. But I want to thank you guys very much. And I thought it was a lot of fun. So thanks again. And again, check out the I don't think we have to edit anything out, but it was pretty good. The language was good. So.
Can I finish up with one thing?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of household names in the game, and there's, you can throw a name out there. Everybody in the world knows them. Not everybody knows Pete Mackanin, but Pete Mackanin was a heck of a manager. He never has gotten credit for the job he did in Philadelphia, in Cincinnati especially. And, sometimes they go for a bigger name or whatever, but, Pete was a heck of a manager. He played in the big leagues, so I bow to him. He played the ultimate goal. Nobody signed up in 74 and 69 and said, boy, I can't wait till I get to coach.
Yeah.
The ultimate goal is to be a player. You guys did it. I didn't. But for those who went on and stayed and coached and managed, I tell you what, Pete was one of the best.
You're going to make me cry, Jim.
Well, that's why I try to get guys like you that maybe, you guys had great careers. You don't have the name recognition of the Lou Pinellas and the Jim Lelands of the world. But, a couple reasons. You guys are telling great stories about minor leagues, about, the transition, how to deal with players, getting to the big leagues. And secondly, I don't have to pay you guys. I'd have to pay those guys to do this. So, that's why I have you guys on. So.
I appreciate it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, let's try to get together in in September and
anytime.
And we'll talk about the pennant races a little bit and because some unique things are happening in our game as starters go 5 innings every night. These bullpens are starting to get really worn out, and so you're going to see some really drastic games, I think, in the rest of August and September, where pitching becomes more and more difficult. So anyway, thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Ed.